Hey everyone, we got youth from Rabanastre Vaan yesterday at an unusual time. Usually this video would have released on Friday, meaning yesterday, but it's Saturday today. And it's not my fault for once. Gumi actually did, as you've all noticed, push the maintenance by 1 day. But let's get right to it because Alum is spinning the element wheel again, meaning Vaan isn't all that great. Furthermore, he is just your average SLB trash unit using the standard breaker template from Alum, meaning he doesn't have a 90% break, which obviously should be the golden standard for today's breaker units, but they're not because Alum. Anyway, or Gumi, I should say. Gumi is to blame. They could have always Vaan in this regard, but they didn't. So he's your typical SLB unit, but with some caveat. And one of those is his ability. It should read Oiru. I'm kind of curious what it will read in the English version because I'm recording this video actually before maintenance. So it's your 160 fire imperil, one enemy, 3 turns. Basically 3+1 turns, because if you cast it on your turn, it's for the enemy turn, but effectively 4 turns. But you all should know that by now. So that's really good, right? Even though it may be just once per battle, but he has another 160 imperil should the boss, for whatever reason, clear his own imperils. You can reapply this via his SLB, but we'll get to that. And then on the other side of the screen, you see his random ability cooldown. It works the same as with Balfir last week, meaning you have a chance to proc both. So he has 230x LB modifier increases on this, meaning if you use Roka with that, you could reduce the cooldown to basically immediately have it back up again. And if you roll good enough, well, you might get the other effect because, for example, you could have the top effect, Tateo Misete, meaning probably something I'll show you, or I'll show you all. And the other one is Korenara Doda. How is this, basically? So whether you have how's this or I'll show you, it's different effects, meaning it stacks. So in a best case scenario, you gain 60 on this, but typically you don't bring Roka to any fight anymore, meaning you only have one of those. It's your 30% fire amp, physical magical, even though it's just for himself, meaning actually just physical, and 30x LB modifier increase. The other effect does literally the same. The abilities. What I found rather funny is that Neo Vision Vaan or SLB Vaan, because I consider SLB units just glorified 7 stars, and Alum proves my point. This Vaan iteration has 7-star Vaan's abilities. Those are full break, and the other one I don't know its name, and I'm just too lazy for. Oh, it's just full down. Full breakdown, yeah, and the other one is Furu Breaku. Oh, full breakdown is the lower one with the 83% breaks, and the other one is full burst, basically Basto it reads. So full burst for 80% breaks. It's literally even the same damaging modifiers with 15 and 20x. So I find that highly disappointing. We're 2.5 years into the Neo Vision era. This doesn't have any place, even on an SLB unit, but it goes to show SLB units aren't just glorified 7 stars. The rest of the kit is pretty much reminiscent of the 7-star version, so meaning he has that Mirage ability, even though it was auto-cast on the 7-star, this one can literally spam it at 2 stacks instead of 1, so that's a slight upgrade. Again, confirming glorified 7-star. And he has attack and defense break at 87% for 3 turns, still single target. But what really grinds my gears are the passives you see on the left-hand side. So one of the passives is that he gains 100% attack if he's wearing a mace. and also 200% stone killer if he's wearing a mace. Now, this is really kind of dumb in my opinion, because for one, the sprite, as you can see in the top right, he's clearly wearing a spear, but that spear he wears, that is considered being a fist. You can't make this up. I don't know what Alum is smoking and how in the world this is considered a fist. But here we are. So he's not getting that 200% stone killer ever because nobody uses maces. We don't have a good mace unit. Maeve, yeah, I know, but you never use her technically. So that one won't be ever applied. And this gets worse because he has another passive for another 50% attack and defense, magic, and spirit with mace, meaning 150% of his potential stats are coming from maces which you're not using. I find that highly dumb. But on the other hand, you gain 100 stats if he's wearing a fist, which is his STMR. So that's okay. But still, you are definitely missing out on some passive stats. And I hate that concept. It's just so dumb. Why even do this to begin with? I don't understand. But it just doesn't end here. He has that standard grounder single use, 88 spirit and defense break, 85 attack magic break, single target, single use. I don't know. It's just bad game design. Full stop. Also boosting 130 fire and wind imperils. Nobody's gonna write home about that, honestly. And that reminiscent of the 7-star provoke ability. Yeah. Let's also talk rather quickly about his magic abilities, Raise, Dispelga, as well as Cura. So nothing really fancy, but I appreciate the effort because he has more than 3 abilities compared to Reagan and X that are return. Let's also check out the LBs. So the base form or the basic LB is just your standard 88 break, 88 defense break, 87 spirit break. So for whatever reason, the limit burst is worse than his single use grounders, but okay. 145 AoE party-wide physical and magical human killer, 145 fire imperil, and 150x fire physical damage, 27 hits. This should be your standard bolting strike hits, but it's probably weird frames bolting strike, so you have to delay it, just like Balthier. And then there's the super limit burst. I'm actually not sure whether this actually is bolting strike, because bolting strike is 25 usually, but yeah. Anyway, and the super limit burst is your 89% defense break, 87 still spirit break, and still 85% attack magic. So as you can see, yeah, this is your standard template. I'm still mad that this isn't 90% breaks, or at least defense break. I wouldn't mind about the spirit break staying at 87, but not being a 90% spirit break. Let me just put this into perspective. Dark Visions bosses as well as trial bosses, such as the current Belphegor, they have 0% passive defense, meaning your 89% defense break is in fact 10% less damage than a 90% break. And that is kind of bad, because for the upside of having a 160 imperil, it is outweighed by the 90% break. So you'd rather bring your 90% breaker and 135 imperiler than this. Your whole team gains more damage. So there is no place for Vaan in the entire meta. Furthermore, it's only 160 human killer on the SLB. You have to start the chain with him such that everybody benefits from this, which is another downside because usually your units have an EX plus 3 ability that unlocks such a human killer, or such a killer buff, so to say. So again, rather disappointing. The 160 Fire Emperor, that's cool. He has that on cooldown, so that's nice. You can actually do it beforehand. And lastly, it's a 250x Fire Physical ability, which is 280 with his own cooldown. And if you add Sylvie, because that's what I do usually, it's 300x in total. Keep in mind, you cannot use what's its name, Tyrus' Spirit. Technically speaking, you could use the STMR of Reagan the Return. No, Axter the Return, that's a true double hand one. and you could reach 330. However, most likely not using his own STMR because there's Wilk's STMR, which is technically speaking better, meaning you are forced to use his close TMR, and that means you are going to lose another potential LB modifier increase. So let's talk about the TMR STMR vision card. TMR aforementioned close breaker units only, please keep that in mind. And it sports 1500 HP, 60 attack, 100% attack passive, as well as 100% true double hand attack. Furthermore, Vaan variants, meaning 7-star Vaan and 5-star, not 5-star, the 3-star or 4-star Vaan. There's only 3 Vaans, so all 3 of those, they gain 500 static attack as well as 50% LB damage. Which is another reason you actually kind of want to use this because of the LB damage and the static attack, you're kind of forced to. And then there is his Super Thrustmaster. It looks like a spear, clearly, but it's a two-handed fist at the standard fist variance of 1.45 to 1.65 variance, 230 attack, pretty good, as well as 35% physical evasion and 200% chain acceleration, normal and elemental chain. Now, please keep in mind, and I will always repeat this, chain acceleration is not the same as chain cap. Chain cap, for example, is on Lightning's STMR, Indestructible Light. That increases your chain limit boost. This item, however, just applies to a faster chain, to a faster chain. That's actually it. That's the wording. So in the top right, you see the chain modifier boost, right? That goes from 0 to 300. This item makes it so that this 300 value is reached faster, such that Vaan actually deals his maximum amount of damage possible within that chain faster than he usually would. Now, chain cap, what it does, it just blanket 20% more damage when going from 5x to 6x. And that's the difference. You still need either one of the Magister's clothes, helmets, or rings on Vaan or Indestructible Light. This Super Thrustmaster won't help you with chain cap increase. And lastly, there's the vision card, 90 attack at level 10, base attack. Level 4 passive, 25% LB damage. Level 7 passive, already locked to breaker units, another 25% LB damage. And level 10 is 300 static attack. So all in all, the TMR is pretty good for Vaan especially, although one could argue that Axstar and Reagan Returns STMR are technically better because 30x increase in LB modifier outweighs 500 static attack. But then again, we're missing out on 50 LB damage, so for Vaan, probably it's better to go with his TMR, but for all other breaker units, you would prefer Axstar / Reagan Return STMRs. But then again, apples and oranges, it's hard to say whether you value this STMR or TMR level. I think the TMR is actually pretty decent, but it's not quite STMR, so actually apples and oranges. The STMR I find rather good. The only really better one is the one from Wilk. It has more attack as well as LB damage. I find that more valuable than the physical evasion because, truth be told, we have plenty ways of reaching 100% evasion. Having a two-handed fist being with evasion, I don't feel like that's worth it, honestly. But it's still a decent one, and if you don't have Wilk, that's a great substitute, honestly, even though it's missing LB damage. And yeah, lastly, vision card, absolute trash. You don't want this, you'll never use this. We're far better than this. So let's check out the damage calculations. Again, 300x, a breaker unit, that won't fare well. But I still did it, so here's the build, 6x cap via Magistite helmet. Other than that, build for Aquatic and Demon. This to build. It actually works with Lone Swordsman. He doesn't gain the last benefit, the ability. He can't use the global exclusive or FFBE ability, but everything else applies to him, so that's still to keep in mind. And on Coco, Ryu as well as the Wilk STMR. So let's check out the result, and unsurprisingly, he is at the bottom end of the sheet of mine, sporting 42.7% of Chizuru's damage. He's just very, very slightly above Emperor Marcia, who is also a breaker unit. It's a mage, so they are rather comparable in that regard. But funnily enough, Sorceress Renoa is still simming slightly higher than him. Also Hyunkel simming higher than him. Poppy, Starlight Elena, and Nailika when she's not hitting any of her targets. Yeah. It's kind of grim looking, but then again, please keep in mind, I am not calculating with the 160 Imperial in mind, meaning the true full result for Vaan is from this. He will sim higher if I account for the 160 Imperial. Now this sheet modifies or assumes 130 Imperial to everybody or for everybody, meaning nobody gets the upper hand here. And I always adjust for Sylvie in this regard. So all in all, I feel like he can function as a chain opener, but why? We have so much better units than this. But all in all, he still can provide some chip damage. It's just not going to be meaningful to the overall party, because the party is going to lose 10% damage overall if you're not using a 90% defense breaker. And thus, very unsurprisingly, the rating is exactly the same as it was for Reagan the Return and Axter the Return, 4 out of 10. Please keep in mind, a 4 out of 10 doesn't mean a unit is necessarily bad or inherently bad. It just means that the use cases are rather small. I'd rate a 10 out of 10 unit, for example, gets lots of uses. You will see that all the time, which is why Sylvie, Esther, and Roberta have 10s. Whereas units that are so hyper specialized, they tend to be rather low tier in damage. There is Boy Shinju, Summer Sniper Physalis, those come to mind. Those are 1 out of 10s. They have super hyper specialized cases, earth or water magic fights, and even those do not apply to them. Meaning the 4 out of 10, yeah, Vaan certainly has his place somewhere in the very, very small window of today. And then he's never going to see play again, most likely. And the reason is, yeah, there is a trial coming, the Cerberus trial, that wants you to use fire, because that's, or ice, those are the two elements that you should be using, because the boss has more than 200% resistance to that, meaning a 160 Imperial is actually helpful. Combine that with a field Imperial, such as from, what's her name? The one with the Phoenix... from Final Fantasy VI, not Rydia, not left here. I forgot her name, but I hope you all know who I mean. There's, I'm so annoyed now that I don't remember her name. Let me really quickly look this up, because I feel like it might be important for those who are looking for the unit right now. So I know by heart it's either Final Fantasy V or 6. Summoner Lena, that's the one, exactly. So with that combination, you could actually rather easily defeat the Cerberus fight, 160 Imperial plus the 25% field Imperial, or is it 30? It means you can actually deal some damage. But with a Fire Clash of Wills upcoming, we know that the next boss is particularly weak to fire. There is reason to assume that the next global unit will power creep Vaan, and the next global unit may be either next week or the week after, and she's going to be really, really powerful. So take it for what it is, and this also means that Vaan has no real place in the meta. Yeah, the 165 Imperial is cool, the good STMR is cool, but then again he has no weapon Imperial, super trashy vision card, as well as bad breaks. Full stop. We have Lara, we have Venera, we have Wilk, we have Locke with Crownstone. There's 4 options, 5 even, Hawkeye, that have 90% breaks, and those units are more valuable than Vaan in that regard, just for dark visions. So he's a bad breaker compared to Lara and Wilk in particular. Won't see play outside that Cerberus fight, and I'm still highly doubtful he will even see play in that case. People were like, oh, you're gonna use Renoa for Belphegor because she has that huge Imperial field for dark. Well, turns out, who cares? We got Roberta. Belphegor is weak to fire. You don't need any dark team, you can just go fire. Dun, dun, dun. Too bad. That's another bad take. Taken down rather easily. So, Vaan, safe skip, and that's pretty much the end of the review. Thank you all for watching. We'll see each other tomorrow for the Rain cosplay review. And until then, have a wonderful rest of the Saturday evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you're from. Bye bye.